Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the World IA Cafe Speaker Series. Thank you for joining in today. We have an excellent webinar. I know for sure it will be excellent, and I'm sure you will immensely enjoy it. My name is Rupa Mishra. I'm an associate professor at Rutgers University. I manage and teach in the user experience design and product design concentrations in the MBS program. I'm also an active member of World IA Association. The topic for today's webinar is custom taxonomy creation. The speaker for this interactive event is Heather Hedden. Heather is a taxonomist for over 25 years. Currently, she works for Semantic Web Company. Over the years, Heather has worked for so many different companies. You will see all these things, all her accomplishments in her LinkedIn profile link, which I will share shortly. She has so many accomplishments, starting from doing workshops to teaching online, and author of the book, The Accidental Taxonomist. So let me share her LinkedIn profile link in the chat. Here it is. Also, I would like you to know that we'll be recording all the speakers in this World IA Cafe series. The videos will be available on a World IA's website, and let me share that as well, the link. If you have questions about World IA, we do have. Maybe Andrew is here. He'll be able to answer your questions. It's a great organization, and you'll get the opportunity to meet people from all over the world. If you are interested, please to join the organization. Every year we host the World IA Day, and this is an international event, and this has been going on since 2012. The format of the Cafe Speaker Series is this: about 45 to 50 minutes, maybe 50 minutes would be the talk, followed by 10 minutes Q&A. So please don't hesitate to ask your questions. Also, I would like to remind you, this is a great opportunity to network with one another. If you would like to share your LinkedIn profile link, please do so in the chat. Let me put mine.
Yeah, I'm happy to accept invitations to connect.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I will also share with you my department's website link. If anyone is interested in our UX or product design programs, these are master's programs. So enjoy the webinar today, and over to you, Heather.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to jump right in because I have a little bit too many slides for 40 minutes. So I'm going to go really quickly on the introduction for taxonomies and focus on the sources for terms and term and label creation, since that's what we want to focus on with custom taxonomy creation. But to understand that what a taxonomy is for, it's the concepts and terms are used to tag or index or categorize pages or content to make them easier to be found, supporting better findability than just a search engine, a search alone. And the taxonomy can be considered as an intermediary between users and content, linking both, and therefore it should suit both the content and the users, and thus be custom created for your content and your users. There are kind of different approaches. Sometimes people think the taxonomy more as a hierarchy of terms and categories and subcategories, parent, child, to guide users from broader to narrower topics. It's kind of similar to navigation. And another kind of focus or view of taxonomies is as tags, like controlled vocabulary, controlled metadata for consistency. And this is especially implemented as search suggestion terms or refinements or filters. Really, a taxonomy has both features, and some lean more towards one and some lean more towards the other. This example of a screenshot of e-commerce categories and subcategories, you can see is definitely the kind of the hierarchy of categories. We see actually 3 levels here for the top level of office supplies, and then narrower, and then a third level. Whereas if it's a control value, a list of terms, if the user types into a search box, they might see how it matches against search terms instead of it just being keywords that are found in text. So there are different kinds of structures to taxonomies. Sorry, I still didn't get my formatting here, right? A more hierarchical taxonomy, and then faceted has different aspects or dimensions or sides to a query. So the other one having to do with jobs, you can limit or filter by career level, function, or industry. And you can even have a hierarchy within a facet. Now, the question is a classification system a taxonomy? And I think many basic introductions to taxonomy say, yes, it's like a classification system. I want to point out, no, there are differences. And if we look here, there are some things like a category up there, 040 for unassigned, and several of these that have the word other in it. And because everything has to go into a category, and if there isn't one, we'll just call it miscellaneous and we'll leave one for assigned later. But of course, nobody's going to look up, I want to look up the other. It's just, it doesn't work that way. So, and then there's just, it's rigid. It doesn't allow for flexibility and growth. And you can see some things are kind of archaic and biased. So, I've had this side-by-side comparison, also having those classification codes, like everything is kind of strict, whereas taxonomies don't. And they also have synonyms or alternative labels to look for, and just the terms that are needed. And so it doesn't have to be this hierarchical structure where we have the hundreds level and the tens level, and, this numeric so-called balance. It can be deeper in some levels areas and not so deep in others. And it's designed to be not just browsed, but it could be searched and not fully displayed, such as I showed in Type Ahead. And it's custom built to include just the topics and the content to be tagged, instead of ones like, oh, this is going to be used in every library, no matter what. It can also grow and adapt without limits instead of just one category for unassigned, and doesn't have any of those miscellaneous or other. Now, if you have a background in user experience design and website design, you might think of navigation, menus and submenus, and a taxonomy is like that. But there are also differences that navigation is really kind of fixed for a certain site and just that, whereas a taxonomy, although I did say it was custom built, there's still some reuse and adaptation, and it really reflects the organic relations of topics, not a browse specific structure of folders and subfolders or paths, or as a sitemap does. And it's based just on topics and subjects, whereas navigation will also often include task-based labels. That's different. And navigation has labels that are based on page titles, whereas in taxonomies, the labels are really based on the concepts and topics. Again, navigation is just for browsing hierarchically top down, while taxonomies, again, can be browsed or searched, not fully displayed, can be for limiting and filtering. And you can get deeper too. I mean, you don't have to show everything, where navigation is usually 2 or 3 levels. But one of the biggest differences in navigation is one-to-one, a label to a page, whereas taxonomy concepts are one-to-many pages or many content items. You get a list of results. And navigation is really kind of limited in size. It doesn't cover all the pages necessarily. If you do have a navigation of menus and submenus, where taxonomy should cover all the content. We can't have anything missing. It should be found. Navigation is somewhat biased to emphasize what's important, and a taxonomy should be neutral to the topic importance. A navigation is less flexible for updating, where taxonomies can grow and adapt without limits. And that's another thing to keep in mind. I'm not going to go into, but you don't just create a taxonomy and walk away from it. It needs to be continuously updated. Finally, navigation is about paths and links, not metadata, but taxonomies usually are metadata. It's the terms that are then tagged to content become metadata on them. So with that in mind, let's go into sources for terms, which for taxonomy, it's the content to be tagged, the users and other stakeholders, because remember, we're customizing to the content and the users. But you also then third, look at external sources. So the users. Content, I guess. Okay. Sources for survey of sample content. You're not going to necessarily look at everything. But of different types and sources and file formats, look for terms, especially in the title, section headings, lead paragraphs, main ideas, as if you were going to tag, but you don't have any tags yet. And try to keep it general for the content item as a whole, not every little, significant name that comes up, because that's what automated methods can do. And consider search strings that the users might want to use to retrieve content. And also consider different aspects: activity, location, event, person type. I think really manual survey can get a better idea, get the main idea better than automated methods. Automated methods are just kind of extracting terms based on frequency. As example here, here's a document, an article, a news article. If we were doing a real workshop, I'd say, look at it, tell me what you think what terms are in there. And yeah, we have place, we have companies, a concept of anti-competitive practices and app stores, an organization, and one person maybe. So that's what would come out of this. And these could be then added to the taxonomy if we needed to. There is a question, are names part of a taxonomy or not? Because sometimes we think of just topical terms, but they may need to be, or they may not. Then there's automatic term extraction, and there are tools and technologies for that, using natural language processing, where extracted terms, consider them as suggestions only. They need to be reviewed for inclusion. These methods consider combinations of frequency overall, frequency within a document, relevancy, and maybe multiple words co-occurrent right next to each other, like phrases of 2 or 3 words. And this method is also used for auto tagging, but it can be too specific. Therefore, for developing the taxonomy, you probably not want to take most of what's suggested out of automatic term extraction to add to a taxonomy. So candidate term extraction is especially practical when the extraction tool is integrated into a taxonomy management software. But I would say this is useful for enriching a taxonomy that is already started from manual identification of terms. This is a screenshot from, I work for Semantic Web Company's vendor of PoolParty software, so I'll have a few screenshots from that has an automatic term extraction feature. This one now here I'm set MIS, which is mutual information score, where there are 2 words that occur next to each other based on these ranks. These are ones that I might want to add to the taxonomy. And again, it's useful because this tool is also for taxonomy management. You can also, CTS is content term score and relevance and frequency. You can sort by different ones and different aspects. Okay, so that was gathering candidate terms or concepts from the content. As far as considering users, one method that sometimes is done is a brainstorming session of stakeholders, for designing the control vocabularies, especially the facets and the high level and the top terms, and gathering at least, top or sample terms, not everything. But the high level, it's nice to do it this way, and then do the content analysis for more details. Then interviews of sample users and stakeholders. I've done this many times. Now, again, this is, not only for coming up with terms, so you can also kind of get the scope, develop use cases, and as well that you can test later, but also obtaining some sample terms that people say, I need to look up blah or something. Then requested list of suggested terms from subject matter experts. And I've done this too. This is a good way of also coming up with terms from users. And finally, search log reports. I do this very often. So this is sort of an indirect input from users. By looking at what have the users been putting into the search box, These search strings could then be terms added to the taxonomy or alternative labels, synonyms for others. We go into a little more detail on these. So brainstorming workshops is, you kind of identify and name things, then you consolidate duplicates, because of course different people are suggesting the same thing by different names, remove the outliers, and then group them into categories, which may be facets, maybe not. And this could be done with, whiteboards, sticky notes, virtual collaboration tools like Miro or Mural or others. So people don't all have to be together in the same room. Although I have done it that way back in the day. And it could be expanded to a larger workshop too, not just a brainstorming session if you want to, discuss other aspects of a taxonomy, and you get kind of more user buy-in when they have, when they're involved and they have a stake in it. Again, PoolParty does have a brainstorming tool built into it. It's called card sorting, but it's not really card sorting. I know card sorting is a little different because we create the cards. We're not just sorting them, but people kind of brainstorm. This one has on examples on food, different terms, and then you can, there was the brainstorming phase. Now this is the structure phase, and we can kind of drag and move them around. I actually did a workshop including this at the Information Architecture Conference, I think in 2021 when it was online. And we had some sample starter taxonomies created from that. Okay. And then a little more detail on interviews for users. Okay, so interviews of sample users do have multiple purposes. It is to obtain, as I said, use cases for better design of the taxonomy and the user experience, to obtain use cases to later test the taxonomy, because you want to do some kind of testing if they can find what they're looking for or tag what they want, and to identify the high-level taxonomy facets and scope, and then collect some terms for the taxonomy. Not, I think still more of them will come from the content analysis. But when you interview people, they should be coming from different roles or functions that deal with the content. And it could be one or two people from the same function at the same time. And have a prepared set of questions. I've sent them to those people I'm going to interview in advance. Because, sometimes, and then we might go off and not stick exactly to script. Different sets of questions for the information users, those who are only, using the taxonomy for search and retrieval and finding, versus the information, I say curators, those who are uploading content and tagging content. These are the two different big categories of users of taxonomy. So you should talk with both of them, but you ask them different questions. So for the information users, questions about how they find or discover information, how they find desired content items. And remember, that's two different finding. One is I need to find some information. I don't know where it is. It could be here, there, or they're looking for a document or a page. So those are different activities a little bit, and they result in different types of searches. And then for the information curators, questions are about decisions and issues for tagging and categorizing content. And here's an actual list of questions I had used when I did a project a couple of years ago for Berkeley Music and Health, Berkeley College of Music and Health Taxonomy. And I was talking to like music therapists, and when they're doing research, what are they looking for? And so it was kind of broad, but I did ask, like in number 5, about the terms too as well, and to get some ideas. And then I put them into a spreadsheet like this. Each person I interviewed is a row. What are their topics? What were keywords that they were using? And those keywords are then candidates for the taxonomy. And then, let's see here, how they begin the search, and other questions and comments and so forth. So that's how I do it. Not a very fancy tool. Okay, And then I had mentioned requesting a list of terms for user input, usually from subject matter experts or domain experts. In a spreadsheet, again, let's keep it simple, allowing columns for, broader, and then the next column over is narrower, and then a column further over could be for synonyms or notes or comments. Now, it's important to define the scope and be very specific what it is, and even give some examples to subject matter experts, because they might think, oh, they might confuse it with a glossary, for example, or a terminology. Let's define all the terms in my domain. That is way too many, too specific. These are concepts for which we're going to tag multiple documents or pages, not, everything that is where the term itself is interest, but you're not going to get lots of documents about it. And I've seen some go too specific without those instructions. You might even tell them, yeah, it should only be 10 to 50 terms in your area. And then you meet and review and discuss them. And as the role with you, if you're the taxonomist role, then edits it and sends it back for approval. So there could be multiple iterations. And here is an actual example from a project I did quite a number of years ago. So on the columns, and I've kind of slid them over here so it looks like a nice hierarchy. So L1, L2, L3, L4 are the levels. This has to do in the field of transportation. And then you can see my even key here that after we met, we added some terms in red and moved some around in blue from one place to another. Purple just changed the wording of it, crossed out, deleted. And then the next column are the synonyms and then there are other comments and notes. I'm sorry to get there. Yeah, the comments and synonyms over to the right. And then search logs. This is an actual search log. It does get into a spreadsheet. This is from help documentation for PoolParty software. All those columns over from C to G, I don't even pay any attention to. It's just sort that, by the total unique searches. But if you go down, of course, we have API in lowercase, API in uppercase, and that's the same. And you can add those numbers together and find out it's really important. So yeah, these should be not necessarily exactly as worded in the taxonomy, but they should be covered. And sometimes, of course, they're a little vague, like row 15 language. What was meant by that? It's not it's not always obvious because you don't have the users to talk to at this point. Here's another one. This was a project I did a longer ago, and just to show you again what I did. So column C through F and green shading, those are what I added. So include or not, yes or no. So some of them I didn't want to include. And then if I was already beginning to think of facets, topic, document type, department, where it might go, term equivalencies mean synonyms. So one of them was the same as the other, and other notes. Like I didn't want to include it because this was something on the tools menu. This was for an intranet. And then finally, external references, reference sources. These, there are different reasons to consult them. I did say that the taxonomy should suit your custom created for your users and your audience. But one thing I've sometimes done is gone into Google and here you can see in quotes, I have this phrase taxonomy management, and I'm looking at the number of results. And I'll have something and I'll word it a different way, let's say taxonomy creation. And I compare the number of results, and if it's radically different, I think, yeah, this is what people are calling it. This is what I'm going to give it as its preferred name. The others will, of course, can be synonyms or alternative labels. And there are external published taxonomies and thesauri out there. Bartok is a good source. It doesn't always show the whole taxonomy, but sometimes it does. All right, and then considering whether something should be included, obviously you have to define the subject area scope of a taxonomy. You can't have just anything that occurs once. It because there should also be the option of just the keyword search as a backup. Is there enough content on the subject, current and anticipated in the future if the body of content will grow? Is important, likely to be looked up? Do users want to and expect it? Then you can look in the search logs. Then they're quite, what are you going to call it? You decided you want to call something, they're different, in a sense, synonyms. So again, if you're going to customize it to your users, think of what your users are most likely to call it. Now, again, we can have alternative labels and synonyms, that's okay, but there will be a displayed form, whether it's in a hierarchy or in the facet filters or in the type ahead search. At some point, they're going to match again, and it should resonate with them and make sense. Then maybe there's organizational enterprise vocabulary or conforming to academic or professional standards, having some consistency throughout as a level of how formal, and wording, then finally wording within the content as well. And then there are some issues about format and style. I mean, this is in general when you create a taxonomy, that the terms should be unambiguous, understood even out of context. And this is, again, different from a navigation. You can't just put certification as narrower to nurses and think that's going to mean nursing certification. No, each concept could be searched and not just browsed hierarchically. Capitalization, again, it should be consistent. I like to start with the first letter of the first word capitalized, so it shows that it's formal and not just a keyword, but capitalizing everything makes it look like a proper noun, like corporate finance is the name of a department. Single word or multi-word phrases, and they are nouns or noun phrases, and plural is used for countable nouns. And the reason behind that is, again, you're expected to get multiple results. Now, I said it should be nouns or noun phrases. Adjectives do exist within certain controlled vocabularies and term lists, but these are more like characteristics or properties or metadata. They don't appear in a hierarchical taxonomy, but they could be in your limiting attributes like colors or sizes. Now, parenthetical qualifiers may be used for disambiguation, not modification. I have here, example, walnut wood. This is more the case in large traditional thesauri, not so much in taxonomies. And avoid term and freight inversions. Again, if anybody had a background in creating indexes at the back of book that are rearranged alphabetically, and then of course people will look up the first letter, but we're talking about the digital format, digital medium. We don't need that. It can be searched. So there are issues. Now, when we customize a taxonomy, we also customize the policy and the style. So these things need to be decided. And then during the process of creating a taxonomy, you decide these issues too. I mean, as I said, capitalization and abbreviation style qualifiers. Maybe there's a length limit due to system limitations. What are the approved or authoritative sources to consult and look when you need to expand and grow the taxonomy? And any rules for the alternative or hidden labels are in some systems. You can have that option too of a alternative label or synonym that's not shown and not displayed. Scope notes or definitions are also possible fields, especially if you're using taxonomy management software, and when to use them and how much to use them. Because if there's a field for definition, it's not like every term needs a definition, only those that are maybe highly technical, but you have to decide that. All right, so I referred to synonyms and alternative labels. These are approximately synonymous words or phrases to refer to equivalent concept, but it's for the context of the controlled vocabulary or taxonomy and the set of content. Again, this is the customized thing. So what works as a synonym or alternative label in one taxonomy for one use might not suffice in another for a different use. And the idea is to capture different wording of how different people might look up the same concept. So different people, that could be the difference between the author who wrote it and the user or the reader, or between those who are doing the indexing and tagging and the end users, or even just different end users would call the same thing differently. You might consider this as multiple entry points to enter, or if you have, again, if you want to compare to a book index, it's like the C reference in an index. And it also supports consistent indexing and tagging, whether done manually or automated. So here's some real life examples. Quite a number of years ago, I worked for Gale, which does indexing of magazine and newspaper, other periodical articles for libraries. We have a massive thesaurus that covers everything. And so these are actual terms in there. And I'm sorry if I'm saying thesaurus or taxonomy interchangeably, but the thesaurus is a little more structured and it has related terms in it too. So some of these, like conflict management, conflict resolution, and managing conflict, are the alternative labels. Now, if you were a legal expert, you might say, oh, no, that's not the same. You know, conflict resolution, conflict management are not the same. But for our use, they're the same. They're equivalent enough. Our documents, our content, that would be the same. Someone looking up one would look for the other. And you will notice the parenthetical qualifiers on some of these, because the word film could have other meanings in science. And I said, this is one big thesaurus covering everything. And old names like telephone holding companies. And then you see at the bottom, piano music doesn't have any. Not every term needs to have an alternative label. Now, I talked about facets before and get a little more into it. So they serve what's called faceted classification, which allows the assignment for multiple classification aspects to a content item or record or page. But think of it as a dimension of a query. Now, facet means face, right? And where have we heard that before? A faceted diamond, right? These different facets or sides of it. So it's a different dimension or side or aspect of something. The intention is that users will search using multiple terms in combination from more than one facet. Think of them as refinements, filters, limit by, narrow by, and together reflect the domain of the content. So if I'm looking for jobs, there's the career level aspect, there's the function aspect, there's the industry aspect. There'll be another one on geographic location as well. And it supports more complex queries, allows users to control, and they can narrow and broaden by selecting from more of them. And it works, it's for both novice and expert users, but the content has to be somewhat similar to share the same facets. I mean, it doesn't have to be 100%, but pretty much so. You know, and again, it's, you know, maybe can you have multiple from the same facet? Maybe, maybe not. But it does require thorough indexing or tagging. You can't just like forget, you have to tag from every facet, term from every facet if it's possible to do so. Otherwise, users might not find something. Oops. So here's some more examples. Looking for people by department, job title, or office location, and documents or content by their project or document type, or, you know, this is more technical content. This one is actually from in my company, Semantic Web Company, we do some research. So we have some research papers, and you can see what the facets are here: the source, that data source, the information source, the organization it comes from, persons, places, principles, products, projects, and specifications. I mean, these will expand if I click on them, but this is just a screenshot. Now, I did say that taxonomy can be displayed in the facet, the terms within the facets. So now these are displayed on the research papers on information sources. A common way is to have them displayed by ranked order of how many documents or pages, content item, or tags. So, you know, the highest number, this is a very small set. 8 comes to the top and they go down lower. Having a hierarchy within a facet isn't quite as common, but we've set it up that way. So you can see information source, print media, and then they're different ones, and face-to-face media and web media. And that's kind of nice. But there is, of course, limited space for that. And the number of facets can be limited to the user. So this one on help documentation, we have only 3 facets. Users are searching on help on our software, and then they get a bunch of results, and then they can narrow by these facets in the left margin. Document source, do they want the user guide for knowledge engineers, the developer guide, administrator guide, depending on their role, what feature of the product, and then just general topics. That's enough for help documentation, just 3. So the number of facets should be somewhat limited, and the number of terms and facets also, if they could be limited, or you could have a long alphabetical list, or one that's topics that's more. So they actually vary quite a bit. All right, so I was going through rather quickly to allow time for questions. The conclusions now are that building a taxonomy is based on analysis of the actual content that's going to be tagged and retrieved, user interviews, definitely, user stakeholder workshops, if possible, especially if it's internal content, definitely user search logs. And this results in a more suitable, customized taxonomy, and results also in greater engagement, commitment, and support for the ongoing use, maintenance, and expansion of the taxonomy. So some resources here. Trying to figure out if I'm making, maybe I make the slides available or somehow get these into the chat. I haven't quite figured that out. But the first one is the ANSI NISO standard, and that's free to access. So ANSI NISO Z39.19, if you can remember that, you can look it up. I write a blog called the Accidental Taxonomist blog. You can just Google Accidental Taxonomist blog, you'll find it. And I wrote a book, The Accidental Taxonomist, and that the websites for the book are listed on, like, the items in the book that have URLs are listed on the website. And then I have past presentations, and I do online training. There is a taxonomy talk community on Discord, and it was actually the idea from it came, from one of the World IA Day people, Grace Lau. She's kind of a co-founder of it. We started it a year and a half ago, I'd say. And just the main conference on taxonomies, Taxonomy Bootcamp. It has a Taxonomy Bootcamp has gone virtual, so everybody can join in. You don't have to be in London. The next one is coming up in October, and I will be speaking there. I'll be one of the speakers, and Taxonomy Bootcamp conference in Washington, DC, and I will be there too, presenting. So that's it, and my contact information.
Thank you, Heather, for the wonderful presentation, and thank you everyone for attending. This was absolutely a great presentation. Thank you.
Okay, good.
Good night. Good night, everyone.
All right. Good night.
Thank you.